cop calls her suspicious. She arrested the chief in front of everyone. What happens when a cop calls a black woman suspicious and demands his chief come arrest her? Only to watch her arrest the chief in front of the entire restaurant. You won't believe the shocking twist behind this takedown. Stick around, this true story will leave you speechless. And before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss these jaw-dropping stories. It was a busy Friday evening at Willow Creek Grill, a popular restaurant where families chatted over steak dinners and couples clinked glasses of wine under the warm golden lights. Among them sat Dana Carter, a confident black woman in her mid-30s, dressed in a crisp white blouse and dark jeans, calm but alert. To everyone else, she looked like someone waiting for a friend, scrolling occasionally on her phone and sipping water. But Dana wasn't there for dinner, she was there on assignment. As a special agent with the FBI's Internal Affairs Division, Dana was working undercover, gathering intel on a growing pile of reports. The local police chief and certain officers were allegedly blackmailing citizens, shaking down businesses for protection money, and threatening to frame innocent people if they didn't comply. Tonight, she was supposed to meet a confidential informant who had proof documents and recordings that could finally bring the corrupt cops down. But before her contact could arrive, trouble found her first. Officer Miller, a stocky, sharp-jawed patrol officer with a swagger that made him instantly unlikable, noticed her sitting alone, occasionally glancing toward the entrance. To Miller, she didn't belong, a stranger in his usual territory, confident and unafraid, something his ego couldn't stand. He strode up to her table, puffing out his chest, his voice loud enough for nearby diners to hear. "Ma'am," he said, resting a hand on his belt, "a couple of customers are feeling uncomfortable. You look suspicious. Mind showing me some ID?" Dana looked up calmly, her eyes steady. "I'm just waiting for someone. I haven't done anything wrong," she replied evenly, not wanting to blow her cover yet. Miller smirked and leaned closer, lowering his tone but making sure others could still overhear. "You scouting the place? Looking for trouble? People don't just sit here staring around unless they're up to something." Conversations at nearby tables went quiet. Some diners subtly pulled out their phones to record. Dana held her composure, but Miller's voice grew sharper as he said into his radio, loud and theatrical, "Dispatch, get me Chief Bradley. We've got a situation here, possible threat in the restaurant." He then turned back to Dana with a smug grin, as if daring her to argue. Dana, knowing exactly who was about to walk through that door, simply folded her hands and waited. The restaurant's hum of conversation turned into a low buzz of tension as the front door swung open with a forceful push, letting in a rush of night air and the imposing figure of Chief Bradley, standing over 6 feet tall, with a square jaw and a gray-streaked mustache that matched his dark uniform. Bradley carried himself like a man used to everyone moving out of his way. 2 uniformed officers trailed him, their faces expressionless, but their posture rigid, like soldiers awaiting orders. Diners leaned back in their booths, murmuring as they instinctively made room, phones quietly rising to capture what was about to unfold. Bradley's boots thudded against the wooden floor as he marched straight to Dana's table without even acknowledging Miller, who now stood to the side, chest puffed out as if he'd just summoned a storm to do his bidding. Bradley stopped inches from Dana, his hands clasped behind his back, his gaze sweeping over her like she was a piece of evidence rather than a person. "So," he said, his deep voice echoing in the sudden quiet, "you're the one making everyone nervous, sitting here staring around, making people uncomfortable. You planning on ordering something or just loitering?" His tone wasn't just condescending, it was threatening, a warning wrapped in a smirk. Dana didn't flinch, didn't look away. "I'm waiting for someone," she replied calmly, her voice steady but firm. "And I've broken no laws." Bradley chuckled, a humorless sound. "You know, I can have you removed for trespassing, if the owner asks. Or better yet," he leaned closer, his breath hot and deliberate, "I can arrest you right now for creating a disturbance. All I need is one person here to say they feel threatened." The statement wasn't about law, it was about power, the kind Bradley had wielded for years to silence anyone who dared challenge him. Dana tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing as she spoke just loud enough for Miller, the 2 officers, and the watching crowd to hear. "Are you absolutely sure you want to go down this road, Chief?" A flicker of confusion crossed Bradley's face, quickly masked by a scowl. "Lady, I don't know who you think you are, but you're about 3 seconds from a ride in the back of my cruiser," he growled, gesturing for one of his men to step forward with cuffs. Miller smirked, practically vibrating with anticipation at the sight of his boss about to put this suspicious woman in her place. Dana let out a small sigh and reached, slowly and deliberately, into her handbag. Every eye in the restaurant followed the movement, phones angling to capture the moment. Then, with a smooth flick of her wrist, she pulled out a black leather wallet with a golden badge and ID card that glinted under the warm restaurant lights. The room went still. "Special Agent Dana Carter," she said clearly, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "FBI Internal Affairs Division. Chief Bradley, as of this moment, you are under investigation for extortion, blackmail, and abuse of power." and by the authority of this signed federal warrant. She reached into her coat and unfolded the official document for all to see. You're coming with me. The collective gasp from the crowd was audible, followed by a wave of hushed whispers and the unmistakable sound of more phones clicking to record. Miller's jaw dropped, his bravado crumbling into wide-eyed panic. Bradley, on the other hand, barked out a sharp laugh, though it sounded more like desperation than humor. "This is a joke," he scoffed, his voice louder now, as if sheer volume could reassert his dominance. "You think you can just walk into my town, into my restaurant, and slap cuffs on me in front of my officers and these people? You're out of your mind." Dana didn't blink. "Actually," she replied coolly, "I can and I will." At that moment, two men who had been sitting quietly at a booth in the corner stood up. Both wore casual clothes, but their movements were purposeful, their hands already reaching into jackets to reveal their own badges. They weren't random diners, they were backup agents, there to ensure that this takedown went smoothly. The tension in the room reached its peak, the air so thick with suspense that even the faint clinking of a dropped fork made heads turn. Bradley's officers shifted uneasily, clearly torn between their loyalty to their chief and the undeniable weight of federal authority now surrounding them. Bradley's jaw tightened as he glanced around the room, realizing every phone was pointed at him, every witness seeing his power evaporate. Dana held his gaze unflinching and said, "You can come quietly, or we can make this messy, your choice. But either way, Chief, this ends tonight." The moment hung in the air like a drawn breath, every diner frozen as they watched the scene unfold. Chief Bradley's face was red, a mixture of rage and disbelief, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked like it might crack. Miller, the officer who had started it all, was pale now, his earlier swagger completely gone. The two uniformed officers who had arrived with Bradley exchanged uneasy glances. Neither dared to move forward or back. They weren't corrupt like their boss, but they weren't about to defy him at least, not until they knew how this would play out. Dana's voice cut through the heavy silence, calm but with an edge that could slice through steel. "Chief Bradley, this is your last chance. You can come quietly, in cuffs like a man, or we can drag you out of here while everyone in this restaurant records you screaming. Either way, you're leaving with me." Her words weren't loud, but they carried, each syllable landing like a gavel strike. The diners, sensing they were witnessing something historic, murmured among themselves. Someone whispered, "He's the dirty chief. I heard about him," while another muttered, "Finally, someone's taking him down." A man near the bar raised his phone higher to capture the moment, whispering, "The whole internet needs to see this." Bradley, realizing the walls were closing in, tried one last tactic. He straightened his back, forcing a smirk he didn't feel, and barked, "This is a setup. She's bluffing. None of this will hold up in court." His voice, once booming with authority, now had cracks, and cracks everyone could hear. Dana stepped closer, close enough that only he could hear her next words. "The audio recordings. The ledgers, the business owners you threatened there, all in our custody. Not the only bluff here, Chief, is you pretending this isn't happening." Bradley's eyes widened for a brief second before he turned away, refusing to meet her gaze. That tiny flicker of fear was all Dana needed to see. She gestured to the two backup agents. Without hesitation, they moved in, each gripping one of Bradley's arms and pulling them behind his back as they snapped the cold steel handcuffs around his wrists. The room erupted not in chaos, but in a low, collective murmur of shock and approval. Phones clicked, cameras flashed, and someone whispered loudly, "I can't believe it. He's actually going down." Miller took a step back, stammering, You can't do this. You don't even have jurisdiction here. This is illegal." His voice cracked as his eyes darted to the diners, searching for anyone back him up. Dana turned her gaze toward him, her expression colder now. "Officer Miller," she said, her tone flat, almost bored, "you might want to stop talking, because as of this moment, you're also under arrest. You extorted at least for families threatening false charges unless they paid you cash. You're on our recordings, and we have sworn statements. You're not going to talk your way out of this one." Miller froze, his mouth hanging open. The color drained completely from his face as the backup agents turned their attention toward him. "Wait, no, this isn't," he began, but before he could finish, his hands were pulled behind his back, the metallic click of cuffs silencing him mid-protest. A few diners actually cheered quietly, a handful clapping in restrained celebration. One woman near the window muttered, "About time. That man harassed my nephew for months." As both men stood cuffed, Dana addressed the room, her voice calm, but firm, projecting so everyone could hear. "For those of you recording, here's the truth. Chief Bradley and Officer Miller have been running an illegal operation in this town for years, taking bribes from local businesses, blackmailing innocent people, and threatening to ruin lives if anyone resisted. That ends tonight. No badge protects someone from justice." The murmurs in the crowd turned to nods and hushed comments of approval. People looked relieved, almost liberated, as if a weight had been lifted off the room. Dana gave one final look to her agents, who nodded and began escorting the disgraced chief and officer out of the restaurant. Outside, the flashing lights of unmarked federal SUVs painted the street in a surreal glow of red and blue as the corrupt officers were loaded in for transport. The entire restaurant seemed to exhale at once, as if they'd all been holding their breath, and one diner whispered to another, "I'll never forget this night." News traveled faster than wildfire. By the time the FBI's UVs left the restaurant's parking lot, videos of the arrests were already online, spreading across social media like a storm. The hashtags #CorruptChief and #JusticeAtDinner trended within hours. Local news stations sent vans to the restaurant, interviewing witnesses who were still buzzing with adrenaline. "We watched it happen," one man told a reporter, his voice trembling with excitement. "The chief came in ready to bully her, like he's done with everyone else, and she just took him down, cool as ice. I've never seen anything like it." Another diner showed her phone, replaying the moment Dana flashed her badge. "Look at that," she said, grinning. "He didn't see it coming. None of them did." The town, long aware of whispers about Bradley's shady dealings but too afraid to act, erupted with a strange mix of outrage and relief. Outrage that it had gone on so long, and relief that someone had finally put an end to it. Business owners who had been too scared to speak up began coming forward, giving sworn statements to the FBI. One shop owner, his voice breaking in an interview, revealed, "I paid him every month just so he wouldn't shut my place down. We thought no one would ever stop him. I thought he was untouchable." The FBI confirmed to the press that their investigation had been ongoing for over a year, building a mountain of evidence before making the arrest public. The restaurant takedown, Dana explained in a brief press statement, was deliberate. "We wanted the community to see that no one, not even a police chief, is above the law. These arrests were meant to send a message. Intimidation ends here." Meanwhile, the videos from the restaurant were racking up millions of views online. The sight of Bradley's smug expression twisting into disbelief as Dana held up her badge became a viral meme. Miller's sputtering protest, "You can't do this," was remixed into TikTok clips and parodied across platforms. But beyond the viral buzz, real change was happening. The state attorney general announced a full audit of the entire police department, suspending multiple officers who had either assisted Bradley or turned a blind eye. Internal Affairs found that Bradley had personally siphoned hundreds of thousands in fees from local businesses, disguising them as donations to a police charity that didn't exist. Miller's crimes were even more personal. He had harassed minorities disproportionately, threatening to plant evidence or fabricate charges unless they paid him off, acts that now carried civil rights violation charges on top of extortion. The community, long living under a cloud of fear, finally felt the weight lifting. A town hall meeting a week later was packed wall-to-wall where citizens applauded Dana and her team for their actions. One woman stood up, tears in her eyes, and said, "We've been scared for so long. Tonight, for the first time, I feel like we can trust someone again." Dana didn't bask in the applause, she simply nodded, stating, "This was a team effort. There are good officers out there who helped us. They deserve your support, not your fear." The crowd roared in agreement, their voices echoing through the hall like thunder. For the first time in years, hope didn't feel like a stranger in this town. The wheels of justice turned quickly after the dramatic arrests. Chief Bradley and Officer Miller were formally charged with extortion, bribery, conspiracy, and multiple civil rights violations, each count carrying hefty sentences. Their trial became a statewide spectacle, with every major outlet covering the fall of two men who had once seemed untouchable. Witness after witness took the stand, detailing how Bradley's protection fees drained small businesses dry, and how Miller's threats of fabricated charges drove families into debt out of fear. The jury took less than 2 days to deliver their verdict, guilty on all major counts. Bradley received a sentence of 35 years in federal prison. Miller, 28. Neither man showed remorse as the judge handed down their punishment. The arrests didn't just end with them. Their downfall triggered a sweeping internal purge of the department. Several other officers, once emboldened by Bradley's rule, were suspended or indicted on lesser charges, while honest cops who had tipped off the FBI were promoted into leadership roles. A new interim police chief, a respected veteran from another city, was brought in to rebuild the force's reputation from the ground up. Policies were overhauled, body cameras became mandatory, oversight committees were formed, and an anonymous hotline was set up so citizens could report abuse without fear. Weeks after the trial, Dana Carter returned to Willow Creek Grill not as an agent on assignment, but as a customer. The restaurant's owner, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, recognized her instantly and came over, shaking her hand firmly. "Agent Carter," he said warmly, "I just want to thank you. That night, you didn't just arrest those men. You gave this town its courage back." Dana smiled faintly, her usual stoic demeanor softening. "It wasn't just me," she replied. "It was everyone who finally spoke up. Justice doesn't happen alone. It happens when people refuse to stay silent." The diners around her, overhearing, nodded in quiet agreement as she sat down to eat. She reflected on that night, the tension, the silence, the flash of her badge, and the relief that washed over the room when the handcuffs clicked shut. Justice doesn't always happen quietly, she thought to herself. Sometimes it needs to happen where everyone can see it, so the truth can't be denied. As the sun dipped outside, casting the restaurant in warm amber light, Dana took her first bite of dinner in weeks without a case weighing on her mind. For once, the town was quiet, not because people were afraid to speak, but because, finally, they felt safe. The video ends with Dana's calm voiceover as the screen fades to black. No one is above the law, not even those sworn to uphold it. If you believe justice should be seen and heard, share this story, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more true stories of courage and accountability.